Hi, doctor. I'm looking at your case with a posterior open bite. And so I first look at where the patient is currently contacting, which is pretty much only in the anterior. So when there's very little to no premolar contact, same thing with molars, this is where it's very, very likely that the cause of the anterior open bite is an anterior interference. But we still always want to look back at the original ClinCheck to see what happened. So we can see that there were no molar movement planned into this ClinCheck. The upper teeth were extruding, IPR, and lower intrusion. So although this looks pretty good, in order to achieve lower anterior intrusion, generally we need more than just this one optimized deep bite attachment. It's not severe intrusion, but just enough to not get there all the way there. And we can kind of see that how the intrusion got better, but not totally. And then also some of the spaces that were likely created by the IPR just didn't fully close. You can see that by having these spaces indicated here. So in order to achieve more intrusion more predictably, I'd like to add at least 2 retention attachments. This works as a retention attachment, but it's a smaller horizontal surface. So having one of these plus another retention attachment like the optimized retention attachment here, or a horizontal rectangular attachment works more effectively to make sure that that intrusion effectively happens. And then when we do some slight retraction as well to close the spaces between the lower anterior teeth, that pulls those teeth away from the upper teeth. And then when we relieve the interference that was caused here, then the rest of the teeth should come together. One of the most common things I see is a ClinCheck where it's sent to align with a posterior open bite. So this is our same current position. And then what Align will give back is a lot of molar movement that's very difficult to do. Now, although that looks pretty on the ClinCheck, these are just not going to clinically happen, especially the second molar. So if you're looking and thinking, those look a little bit winged out, it'd be nice to get those in. That's just not something that can realistically happen. It's even difficult to do with fixed orthodontics. Moving a second molar just certainly isn't going to be very predictable, and definitely not without attachments. So I wish I could control the algorithm that spit this out, but this would never translate clinically. So you can see the changes that I made to get to this plan here. Although we're not doing a lot of movements on the upper arch, I still want to keep a good hold of those teeth so that they don't deviate or we don't get any other movements that we're not wanting to have. I also noticed on the initial ClinCheck that there may not have been bite ramps. Let's check. There were not. So some of what we're seeing with the molar position could be from passive intrusion of the molars. So what I've added into the ClinCheck here is bite ramps so that the molars that, although they're not making much contact now with 1.5 millimeters of aligner plastic, they could still make contact and intrude further. So if part of the molar posterior open bite is from molar intrusion, the solution would be to cut the molars off of the trays so you can keep these attachments all on and then cut those molars off after aligner 9. It's nice to have passive aligners built into the case, so that's one thing that you can request. You can say, please add 3 upper passive aligners, so that way you can give the patient 3 different aligners to allow those to try to settle. Looking at the lower, the goal really is to get those lower anterior teeth away from the upper and relieve that interference. And since this started off with spaces, on the ClinCheck, we're intending to close all those spaces, but it's possible that there still could be a light contact or 2, and that's what the anterior virtual C-chain is for. You'd only want to use one of these aligners at a time. You do not want to give out all 3. You may not need all 3 as they do a lot of movement at once, but that can be another ace up your sleeve or the other aligner in the box that you can get out if you still have a little bit of an interference or light contacts on the lower anterior. I hope that helps.